And now, his view, an editorial opinion by Bill Martin.
Seeing our provincial and territorial leaders all lined up with the Prime Minister talking about a threat to Canada was most assuring. Sadly, the threat, of course, was Donald Trump, and he's commanding far more attention than he deserves. However, the issue has caused our elected leaders to sit down and take a long collective look in the mirror. And even more important, they see flaws in our national system, or should I say, a lack thereof of a national system. It seems they've come to realize that we don't fully or properly operate as a country. Instead, we operate in 10 or 11 separate pieces, each piece with a certain selfish view of how the rest should work. Since they sat down to fight a tariff in a trade war with the United States, they soon had to admit we have been living in a trade war between our provinces for years. We keep out-of-province companies from bidding on public contracts. We refuse to let vendors sell their wares across provincial borders. A Canadian plumber is not a Canadian plumber. He or she is an Ontario plumber or a Nova Scotia plumber. We don't even let a microbrewer sell beer on the other side of the line. Trump got their attention all right, and I'm hoping he has wakened a monster that he will soon regret. But let's applaud the renewed federal-provincial cooperation. Let's give a standing ovation to the premiers and prime minister who might begin to realize we are less of a country than they think. We are called Canadians when it is convenient, but we are called by our provincial moniker when it is not convenient. The question is, whose convenience? The current discussion reveals that we have set up barricades for business reasons. Each of the inter-provincial trade barriers was established at the behest of a private company interest. Each little barricade was built to satisfy a financial interest for somebody or for some company with political clout. What about the interests of the people? What about the interests of the taxpayers? We, the people, are the ones who pay all these bills, and we, the people, are also the ones who suffer with reduced services when that plumber cannot come across the border to tend to our needs. There is no more glaring and critical example today of we the people being ignored in favor of big companies and their directors becoming millionaires and many even billionaires. I'm talking about communications. I'm talking about fairness in telephone and telecommunications, which not only separates provinces, it separates people. Mobile and internet services are now absolute necessities. They are not luxuries. They are essentials to business success and to everyday life. And yet, the federal government continues to let the large companies dictate who gets service and who does not. The failure in federal communications determines the city mice from the country mice. And to make matters worse, some provinces jumped into the breach to expand services of mobile nature, even though it's not their responsibility, spending millions to subsidize the big companies in an effort to reach the corners of our society. And even our municipal governments have invested heavily. Cumberland County also spent millions offering subsidies to get services to areas that were ignored, even though the cell towers and the over-the-air internet services were already out-of-date technology before they got installed. And who paid for those service extensions? You got it, we the taxpayers. The proper solution should be a federal government actually doing something about providing communication service equally to all Canadians. After all, communications is clearly their responsibility. Let's push our elected officials to look at Canada as one, to look at all Canadians, not just their friends, and not just the large voting blocks. We call them cities. Let's ensure that a Canadian plumber can work wherever he or she wants in Canada. And let's ensure that every Canadian is treated and served like a Canadian. At least, that's my view. I'm Bill Martin.
You've been listening to His View by Bill Martin. Listen every weekday at noon, 6 p.m., and midnight, right here on Radio from Hope Center.